Hey everybody, DM Gallibond here, back for another issue of Lore Friday. This time we conclude looking at Chapter 6 from the Out of the Abyss campaign, and this focuses on the adventures in this vermilion city of Blingdenstone. This time we examine the Battle for Blingdenstone, which tests the PC's ability to create a coalition of factions in the Deep Gnome City to thwart the plans of the demon-maddened Pudding King. So the theme of this particular adventure is to construct an alliance of factions from within Blingdenstone to face and defeat the Pudding King. The setting is the ancient Deep Gnome City of Blingdenstone, which is now mostly abandoned except for a few hundred hardy refugees that are trying to reclaim the ruined city after it was plundered by their ancient foes. The hook for this one is that the PCs have learned that the Faceless Lord, which is another name for Juablex, has corrupted the Pudding King and is planning to cover the Underdark in oozes if not stopped. Can you convince the factions within the Deep Gnome City to work together to defeat this menace? All right, and if you've been watching this far, thank you so much. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click the post notification bell so that you can be notified every time new content goes live. As this adventure begins, the PCs have learned that the Faceless Lord is trying to cover the Underdark in oozes. And when the PCs report their findings in the Pudding Court to the Diggermatics, they call for a council meeting of all of the factions within the city. So you have the returning citizens, the Stoneheart Enclave, the Miners Guild, and the Burrow Wardens. Now, if the PCs manage to talk to Chipgrin and take his offer of bringing intelligence from the were-rats to the Diggermatics, then the were-rats are invited to attend this council as well. So after everyone assembles and hears the report of the PCs, they all realize that the Pudding King is a common enemy that represents a credible and growing threat as more and more oozes come to him. The Diggermatics propose a two-pronged attack to deal with this menace. One attack will harry and battle the oozes as a distraction, and the other attack will be an elite fighting force who will be dispatched to the heart of the Pudding Court to deal with the Pudding King himself. They reason that if the Pudding King is destroyed, the unifying and animating force drawing all of the oozes to this place will be eliminated, and the ooze monsters can be dealt with individually more easily. Of course, the elite fighting force is where all the factions turn and look meaningfully at the PCs, suggesting that the heroes are better equipped to deal with the Pudding King themselves than any of the rest of the denizens of this place. But the rest of the factions pledge themselves to roles in the distraction battle against the oozes and support roles for the main battle against the Pudding King. Now, through a series of skill checks and roles, PCs can learn that each faction has ideas that can help with the plan. The were-rats, otherwise known as the Gold Whiskers, are hardier than normal deep gnomes, and if they are brought into the alliance of the city, they volunteer to take a role as frontline infantry against the oozes. The Stoneheart Enclave says that Intimok's boon contains a summoning circle that empowers summon elemental creatures, and those could be a great help in fighting the oozes and the Pudding King himself. Now, the Miners Guild knows of an oil that will protect weapons against the damaging effects of the ooze monsters. To make this oil, they need a large quantity of raw ingredients from Neverlight Grove. Alternately, they have a shipment of high-quality salt that can be sent to Gracklestug in exchange for high-quality weapons that can help in the battle. So now if the PCs have previously passed through either Neverlight Grove or Gracklestug, they may know the status of these places, and they may already have some relationships with some of the important NPCs there. Finally, the Burrow Wardens and the ghost of Burrow Warden Jadger can rally the non-hostile ghost of Blingdenstone's dead Svervneplin to help the living creatures fight against the oozes. Now, the meeting produces a list of potential tasks that can be undertaken. Each task provides a substantial and a material benefit to the battle for Blingdenstone. However, some of the tasks take a significant amount of time to complete. Now, if your players have chosen to explore the Underdark in a different order than we have discussed in this series, it may mean that this is now an opportunity to visit, explore, and engage in adventures in other settlements before you come back to this thread. So there's not there's important tasks to be done, but there's not like a super sense of urgency that if they don't do these tasks within, so many days, that things are going to all fall apart. So it's set up so that you can have a nebulous amount of time, whatever is required in order to complete these other tasks. So here's a few of the tasks and what benefits they will bring to the party. Number 1, finding Intimok's boon or cleansing the temple of Caladoran Smoothhands means that the Stoneheart Enclave will send a summoned earth elemental to aid the party. Now, if they wind up doing both of those tasks, it means that this summoned earth elemental has more hit points than normal. Now, number 2, if they go off to Neverlight Grove and bring back the ingredients, this protects the PC's weapons from the corrosive effects of the oozes. And number 3, if they take that salt shipment to Gracklestug and get the high-quality weapons from there, it will mean that during their assault on the Pudding King, every attack by the PCs deals additional damage, and that damage represents covering fire from archers you're using Durgar-made crossbows. Now, number 4, if the PCs complete Burrow Warden Jadger's tasks, then each party member gets advantage on one attack roll or one saving throw during the battle for Blingdenstone. And finally, number 5, if the sentient gelatinous cube Glabagool came to Blingdenstone with the party, then it will either join the PCs as an ally in the fight, or if it left the PCs once they started interacting with other humanoids, it can show up later during the battle as an ally. So within the Battle of Blingdenstone proper, the PCs have to fight through a random number of encounters before they face the Pudding King. When they first meet, the Pudding King deploys his 2 best children, a black pudding named Princess Ebenmeyer and a gray ooze named Prince Livid. And then the Pudding King flees to his throne room. Now, the 2 oozes will fight to the death for their father, and then the PCs have to track down the king. He will fight from cover, and he has a bonus action that lets him attack one party member with a green ooze on each of his turns. Now, it's important to remember here that green ooze, while it was a monster in the monster manual in some older editions of D&D, in 5th edition, it is a dungeon hazard, and DMs, you will only find that in the dungeon hazard section, chapter 5 of the DMG. So if the Pudding King is defeated, the PCs learn something about his true nature and about the ongoing threat that Juoblex represents to the entire Underdark, and this becomes a major plot point for the campaign. Now, the Svervneplin also realize that the PCs are surrounded, and they send some elemental creatures such as Gallibond and a couple of other kinds of creatures that are under the control of the deep gnomes to bring the PCs to safety. So that means that once they deal with the Pudding King, your PCs don't have to fight their way back out of the Pudding Court. So the PCs will also gain the lasting friendship of the deep gnomes, and they earn a cool magic item to help them control earth elementals. All right, so the most common enemies that you're going to find here, just like last time, they're oozes. Black puddings, which are CR4, gray oozes, which are CR1 half, ochre jellies, which are CR2, and a few gelatinous cubes, which are also CR2. Now, the toughest potential encounter is against the Pudding King himself, who's a CR4 monster, and several green slime monsters he can use to attack a party member on each of his turns. And like I said, the green slime is you're not going to find it in a monster section. You got to go and look in a DMG chapter 5 for that. Two special creatures and some special items here include named oozes. One is Princess Ebenmeyer, and this black pudding has somehow swallowed and yet not destroyed a pair of spell books from a long dead deep gnome archmage. These spell books contain 60 wizard spells that range all the way from first level to 8th level. And this is the largest single cache of spells in the entire campaign. Now, in addition to that, there is a named gray ooze called Prince Livid. He doesn't drop anything. But when the party finishes this battle, if they succeed in defeating the Pudding King, the Deep Gnomes will give the PCs a reward, which is a Stone of Earth Elemental Control. Now, my favorite elements of this adventure is that it sets up a good system of rewarding PCs in combat for doing non-combat quests. So several of the quests in this section are narrative, and some require the passage of a lot of in-game time. Now, early in the campaign, you might remember from the overview, we talked about the fact that they include a chart that gives travel times between all the various settlements of the Underdark. So this reward system also encourages players to think strategically. If there's a task to do, what other task can make that one easier or more likely to be successful if they're done first? So if you want to encourage this type of strategic thinking and planning in your campaign, then you can use this particular adventure as it's set up as inspiration to help your players think of tasks that will give them benefits when they engage in some kind of large scale combat or when they're getting ready to go into an important boss fight in your own homebrew setting. This particular adventure can be homebrewed in many different ways, but I'm going to talk about 5 specific homebrew adaptations you might take from this. So, number 1, you can help a keep, a town, or a village complete various tasks to prepare for an impending attack by an enemy army. Number 2, you can complete a series of tasks to earn benefits or bonuses when assaulting the lair of an important boss NPC or a boss monster, such as a dragon's lair. Number 3, you can complete diplomatic missions, which may or may not involve combat, to build alliances to help the PC's home kingdom or country's army fight a war against an aggressive neighboring kingdom or country. Number 4, you can complete a series of covert missions to help an insurgent population repel an invading and occupying enemy force. And number 5, you can complete a series of diplomatic missions among a group of suspicious or mistrusting populations to prevent the escalation of mistrust into a destructive war that will harm allies of the PCs. All right, you can use this particular adventure with older editions since the ooze monsters have been around since the days of basic D&D. Now, thinking about Beyond Blingdenstone, After Blingdenstone, there's a built-in respite from the Underdark, where the PCs are presumed to have discovered a way to get out of the Underdark and back to the Sword Coast region. This means they can take time to resupply, catch up with important NPCs, sell loot and upgrade their equipment, and take an unspecified amount of downtime to complete things the players may want their PCs to do outside the campaign proper. But their escape is not automatic. There's one final showdown with the drow from Velkenvilve. Yeah, you remember that, where you started the entire campaign as slaves and prisoners of the drow? Yeah, they show back up. And now you guys are a lot higher level, and it might be a chance to get a little bit of revenge. So that's sort of puts a nice bow on the first half of this campaign. And it's presumed that these drow have been pursuing their escaped slaves ever since the PCs fled from Velkenvelve. Now, if you've been watching this far, thank you so much. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click the post notification bell so that you can be notified every time new content goes live. Next time, scratch that, going forward, Lore Friday is changing slightly. Now, we'll still look at the adventures that are part of published campaigns, but the primary focus of each video will be on repurposing the adventure for homebrew use. That means instead of including a section of homebrew adaptations in each video, I'll dig into each homebrew adaptation and talk about how I might change the adventure to fit that specific adaptation. So in other words, things like the types of monsters, the encounters, and the cosmetic changes I might make while keeping the main mechanics of the adventure intact. We will start that analysis by looking at the Escape from the Underdark chapter of the campaign and see how we could repurpose Pursuit by the Drow to create chase scenarios in other settings that the PCs might encounter in those situations. All right, thank you so much for watching. I've been DM Gallibond. This has been Lord Friday. Take care, everybody. Good night.